Welcome to our webinar series on recovery and resiliency on Main Street. I am Kimberly Parsons Whitaker, the Associate Director of Connecticut Main Street Center. Connecticut Main Street Center is the expert resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns that fuel our state's economy. Our mission is to assess, to educate, to convene, and to advocate to develop and grow our traditional downtowns, village centers, and mixed-use neighborhoods. Given the impact of and challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, our theme for programming this year is recovery and resiliency on Main Street. Today's program, Moving from Crisis to Recovery, will feature a trio of smart, creative people with collective expertise in economic development, small business, Main Street revitalization, planning, and disaster recovery. These are people whose depth of experience is impressive, and Tripp, Karen, and Jason wear many hats in the course of an average day. We've asked them to share their thoughts and experiences in responding to crisis while also planning for recovery. A couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session will run approximately 1 hour. Please feel free to type in any questions in the chat function as we go. We'll be monitoring the chat box and we'll have our panelists address your questions when we pause for Q&A. A recording of today's session will be available on our website at ctmainstreet.org, as are all of our workshop archives. And you'll receive a brief evaluation in the next day or so. We greatly appreciate your input so that we can continually improve these sessions. Evaluations are required for AICP CM credits. We are grateful to our sponsors. Our educational programs, Main Street Forums for the 21st Century, are sponsored by Webster Bank, Avangrid, and Farmington Bank Community Foundation. Our corporate investors are M&T Bank, Capital for Change, People's United Bank, and Windsor Federal. Connecticut Main Street's founding sponsors are Eversource and the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. And our growth partners are Avangrid and the State Historic Preservation Office. And our AICP certification maintenance provider is Fitzgerald and Halliday, Inc. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our panel. Tripp Muldrow is an accomplished urban planner and partner of Arnett, Muldrow and Associates, a multidisciplinary firm specializing in economic development, retail market research, community branding, and historic preservation. Tripp has worked with Connecticut Main Street Center in the communities of Sandy Hook in Newtown, the town of Canton, and the town of Cheshire. Karen Pollard is the Economic Development Director for the town of New Milford. She has worked and held leadership positions in local and regional government, as well as in nonprofits. A former board member of a New Hampshire Main Street program, Karen has worked extensively with the Main Street 4-point approach and brings that knowledge and that passion to her work in New Milford. Karen is currently the president of the Northeast Economic Development Association. And Jason Vincent is a planner, an entrepreneur, and the new president of Norwich Community Development Corporation. He's worked as a municipal planner, navigating the necessary and delicate lines between economic development and land use. He is the owner of Epicure Brewing, a microbrewery in downtown Norwich. And in his new position at NCDC, he is overseeing the economic development function for the city of Norwich. So let's have a productive conversation this morning. I'd like to start with, hand it over to our panel by starting with Jason Vincent. Jason, I'd like to ask you to share your thoughts, to talk a little bit about our role as Main Street and municipal leaders, especially during the time of crisis and uncertainty.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you everybody else for joining us today. After last night, I'm not sure I want the title of president, but I'll leave that on the table for everybody else to think about. You know, when I thought about this program and being invited to speak about it, my whole theme of my presentation is it takes a team to get through a crisis. And so I'm just going to share, you know, some of the things that we did on the team side in trying to think creatively and enable some of our businesses to get through the challenges of what's going on. You know, you all know the challenges of what's happening on a state and national level with this pandemic. And so what we were just trying to do is identify what those challenges were and think about where there might be some opportunities, because, you know, in any given set of challenges, you always do like a SWOT analysis, and you can always find that there's opportunities that can emerge from the challenges that you're given, right? That's a principal part of the work that we do as planners or economic development professionals, is always trying to find those opportunities. And what we found in talking to community leaders is that there was an immense spirit of cooperation, that there was a team that was there that really wanted to help. You know, this is a new area for everybody, and people didn't know what to do, but they really wanted to try. So, you know, not really knowing what to do, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, there's no strategic plan that says, here's what you do when there's a pandemic. You know, there may be some actions that you might have on a plan, but there's going to be a lot of things that you don't know, right? Unknown unknowns is one of the most challenging things to work with. And what we found was, why don't we just do one of the things that we're good at, is convening people. As economic development professionals, we work really hard to develop a network, and why not use that skill set that we have, the network and the people in our Rolodex, if people still have one of those, and try to leverage those relationships that we have with other people. And so we just said, hey, what if we just got a team together of people that could help us? And we tried to invite everybody. And what was great about when we started putting the team together is the city's senior leadership, the mayor and the city council president pro tem, basically said, you know, whatever we need to do it. And we don't need the legislative process to get in the way. You know, as administrators, as people that know how to do their work, as professionals within the city, do your job. We're here to support you. We got your back. And that really brought a lot of people to the table in a more compelling and engaged way. And I really think that was a key part of what happened here. Excuse me here. So one of the things that we did when we convened people is just put together a simple agenda. At the time, weren't really sure what was going to happen with outdoor dining, and Stanford seemed to be way ahead of everybody else. Stanford was, they put together a great guidance document that ultimately, I believe, DECD used as part of their restaurant guide. And we just thought, let's socialize that internally, because let's try to answer the questions that we're going to be asked, and let's try to anticipate what the business community is going to be asking. You know, knowing that there was this new opportunity and that many of our restaurants weren't prepared. They don't have outdoor dining, and even worse, they had no place to put outdoor dining. They were on, you know, in an urban place where it was developed in the 1880s or earlier. There's not a lot of land necessarily to do these things. So we just thought, you know, what might we do? What kind of solutions can the city bring to the table? And just started brainstorming with the community as a whole. Before we got to the restaurant community, let's just be prepared that they're going to be asking more questions, and not necessarily know that they can ask certain questions, like, can I use on-street parking? That might not be something a business owner was thinking about. And so we ultimately came up with two programs. We inventoried all of the restaurants within the community and came up with these two initiatives, using private land and using city land. And this is before the executive order exempted zoning and other things from consideration. We were trying to think through, you know, what might a program that uses city land entail? You know, where are we going to focus our energy? You know, where we did the most outreach to the business community, and then coming up with an overall process that kind of guided people through it. At the time, we weren't sure what Liquor Commission was going to do for liquor permits for outdoor spaces. We weren't sure about tenting, but we came up with a set of answers and a process that could get people through it very quickly. We then went through and applied those processes to various sites. So Billy Wilson's a site that has no outdoor space. The property is the building is the property lines, and just coming up with various different ways that it could be handled, and even trying to think through ADA and other complications that could prevent deployment of it. In this case, the travel lane at 12 feet wide wasn't wide enough, but by just putting it out there as a straw man, we were able to get the team to think about it. In this instance, what if we closed the entire road? Not something the community was necessarily ready to do at the time. And then just trying to create documents to convey what it is that we're trying to do. And then ultimately we came up with this final plan that the fire marshal, fire department, police department, every agency could get behind, And to build basically the business, all he had to do was run their business. We did all the background work so that basically all they had to do was run their servers out there and serve food. On the private land side, we went through the same kind of thinking, you know, what can we do and what process entail? Obviously much less involved if you don't need the public involved. And you know, the city doesn't need to ensure that there's no insurance issues or other problems like that. But ultimately, what we found was that the business community came out and adapted to the things that that we were able to employ. We put out barriers on the side of the road, and the artist community just came and painted them. You know, they didn't go out and seek permission because we didn't create a process that required it. Outdoor live music concerts happened within the framework of the requirements. You know, we were able to deploy assets that we had acquired over time, like tents and NPU, you know, public works barriers, to try to put up spaces that worked. And then the city and the private sector came forward and donated picnic tables or the use of their equipment, and we were able to get things out there in space. So what we learned in going through this process, about 5 key lessons here. The first is communication is key. We created a team. The team met every week for half an hour, maybe less. We went through around the horn, if you will, asking everybody on the panel. I see one of my teammates, Angela Adams from the Norwich Chamber of Commerce is here. You know, I just can't tell you enough that it was communication with the teammates, and all the various teammates brought different skills to the table that helped us solve the problem. All our role was facilitator. We might get credit for the work because we were the lead facilitator, but we couldn't have done it without those teammates. Inviting everyone to the table. This is one of the hardest things to do because you don't always know how to capture everyone. I can tell you I spent so much time trying to find contact information for people. But what we tried to do is create a more inclusive space that even if people hadn't been initially invited, the team knew to go out and try to find them and invite them to the table. It was a big team, but you know, the team worked very well together because it was an inclusive environment. We eliminate barriers. You know, this is a time where we need to make sure that process doesn't get in the way of outcomes. And you know, sometimes you can get lost in a process. And as a former planning director running a zoning agency, you know, process was a critical component of what we had to provide for fairness. But when the governor changed the parameters for zoning, that was an opportunity to not get stuck within the barriers of traditional work. This is a temporary thing. It's a temporary condition. We don't need to create barriers that are unnecessary. And being flexible, you know, Kim mentioned that I'm a small business owner. You know, we had to pivot. You know, it's a term that often means that you had to get off your regular business plan. Yeah, we did. Our brewery would typically sell beer over the bar to customers directly or in kegs to restaurants, and neither of those customers existed for several months. And so we had to do something different that involves canning beer. It involved just, you know, having to-go sales, creating a web platform that we may not have had before. You know, so we had to adapt, and that's what businesses in the community has to do as well. You have to be flexible, and you may not have done it that way before. It may not feel comfortable, but if you're not even thinking about being flexible, you can't find any solutions. And then I think the last lesson is that you know, this too shall pass. This is not the first time our country has diversity, you know, faced a challenge like this. Pandemics have come and gone in the past. Maybe this is the first in our lifetime, and certainly there's a lot of things that we don't know about COVID. But the thing is, it'll pass, and anything that we do to provide flexible programs to remove barriers, any of those types of programs, they can be temporary, and then we don't have to get lost in the concepts of zoning. So, you know, that's what I wanted to share with you this morning, and I'll stop my sharing here and let the other panelists speak. Thank
you, Jason. That last comment was really helpful. Don't let zoning get in the way. I think most of us have discovered that the hard way. But very creatively also. I've been really impressed by what I've seen happening around the state. Karen Pollard from New Milford, let me turn it over to you. Why don't you provide a little mini case study, if you will, of what's been happening in downtown New Milford over the last 6 months?
Okay, I'm happy to do that. And for those of you who I haven't met before, I'm Karen Pollard. I'm the Economic Development Director for New Milford. I moved here from New Hampshire, but I've also worked in New York and Minnesota and a couple other states too. I am a certified economic development person through IEDC, the International Economic Development Council. And I'm going to put in a really quick plug for their education programs, because my dealing with this situation and all of the disasters and recessions in the past, a lot of that comes from the work of IEDC, and in particular the RestoreYourEconomy.org website. So if you want some resources to help you be more adaptable, more flexible, come up with new ideas, I highly recommend IEDC and that website. So to just build on what Jason outlaid for everybody, I could not agree more with the various actions that he took in Norwich, and that we basically did many of the same things in New Milford. Number one, whenever there's any kind of crisis or disaster, is communication. How do you reach the people you need to reach? We had a list of businesses with more than 2,000 names, addresses, and phone numbers. Most of the phone numbers were business phone numbers. And by the way, the businesses were closed now. So we found we did not have nearly enough email addresses or cell phone or backup information. So fortunately, the mayor was very proactive. And when within days of everything shutting down, we had a team of people making phone calls to those 2,000 phone numbers to try to get email addresses and numbers that would still work even though they were shut down. And then as things were able to come online and as we got more information, we had a method of communicating with business owners, even if their business was not open at that time, or even if they were elsewhere. Not everyone lives and works in the same town. So we were calling a lot of different places. But you know, as we got information, we could share that with the business community. And that was really critical to being able to then ramp back up as quickly as possible, because we had the ability to do that. I have now sent out, I don't know how many newsletter type emails. At first I was doing it 2 and 3 times a week because that's how fast the information was coming out, and email was our best way to communicate with folks. We supplemented that with live Q&As online, and also then I would interview people from different agencies at the state or different local agencies that could potentially be helpful in solving their immediate needs. Things like how do I pay my rent on my business? How do I get unemployment because I'm a sole proprietor? You know, that was such a critical time to be able to communicate. So having that database of your folks ready for any emergency is so important. I ended up working from home for only 2 weeks, and then I was back in the office. But, you know, obviously one big challenge also was, how do I communicate with the headquarters if I'm not here and can't run across the hall to see the mayor whenever I need to have a question answered, or how does he communicate with his team as well? So all of those things basically got put in place within just days, and of course have been tweaked along the way. But communication in any disaster is really the top necessary thing. And you know, you can't count on being able to put anything in the newspaper and everybody's going to see it. So that's kind of you know, we've got to be much more nimble than that. The next step that we had to undertake that really I focused a lot of my time on was the assessment of the current situation. So, you know, we had many small businesses shut down. Fortunately, in Connecticut, many essential businesses were allowed to stay open. And that gave us at least a starting point for, you know, how do we set them up to be successful? And then how do we deal with the folks who are shut down? New Milford already had 2 industry groups set up, one for manufacturers and one for restaurants, because we had been planning to have a restaurant week in late April. So we already had 2 active industry groups. for the community. So that was a pretty quick outreach to those two groups. But then we also had to set up other groups. So we also had a lot of personal services folks, hair salons, barber shops, even things like yoga studios that all were kind of in that same personal services group. And we would often tailor a message for each industry group or a response to a specific industry group. So since we decided not to do the in-person restaurant week, for example, we ended up doing restaurant month, and we turned it into outdoor dining and takeout month. And so on Facebook, we made a theme for every week. We ran it for 6 weeks, and we did boost it. So we did pay for some advertising on Facebook. Facebook is still really popular in New Milford. I know many other communities have moved on to Instagram and other things, but in our case, it was pretty clear Facebook was going to be the most useful tool. So, we did that for 6 weeks. It got a lot of people who felt comfortable coming out to do that. We had a graduation week, we had a Father's Day week, we had, and then we went right through 4th of July with Happy Birthday America week, which, I mean, who wouldn't want to come out and at least get takeout for that, right? So we really encouraged the restaurants to get creative with their menus. It was up to them, to do that and to set the price points. We didn't determine that. They really needed to take ownership of it and individualize it for their restaurant, but we promoted the heck out of it. And so that was really kind of how we were able to work together. Manufacturing was kept open, so their challenges were completely different. That was more, how do I follow the safe workplace rules? What do I need to do to stay open and to keep operating? What if my supply chain is broken? What if my customer cancels his order? Those kind of things. So we were pretty deep in dealing with a lot of state and federal agencies at that point. Our local economic development corporation repurposed some funding to be able to buy almost 100 plexiglass shields. And we donated them for free to the small independent businesses in the community, not just in downtown, but throughout the community. Anyone who wanted one could have one. And that distribution enabled a lot of folks to feel more comfortable and their employees to feel more comfortable when they could reopen. So we tried to look in our assessment, what are our strong areas? Just you do that SWOT analysis. I know everyone rolls their eyes when you say SWOT analysis, but that's what you have to do. And you have to keep doing it because it's going to change constantly. Again, I take kind of a systems approach. I know Jason talked about he's very process oriented, and I have a tendency to look at the system and try to, identify where we might have broken connections in our system. So, and again, it's very emotional, especially the small businesses that I was speaking to were highly emotional about having to shut down and just kind of canceling their business for the time being. And again, people didn't know how they were going to put food on the table, how they were ever having to let people go and terminate them, highly emotionally charged. But really, I kept trying to look at where in the system are the pressure points that we can affect. Again, working with Connecticut Department of Labor was so frustrating. I know a lot of you were doing a lot of the same thing. Nobody would return your call. You couldn't even, they started taking the phone numbers off the website and then trying to get through in other methods to get folks the assistance that not only were they promised, but they were in desperate need of. And then, of course, in reopening strategies, how to roll those out. So we did have a lot of online live calls because it's all about the communication and really we're educating and training people at that point. And then looking for things that would help the most people the fastest. So for example, we already had online permitting for zoning and for planning in New Milford and building permits. We've had building permits for years. We did zoning last year in 2019, fortunately, but now we had to also have virtual meetings. And how do we do a virtual meeting, make it legal, but as Jason said, kind of eliminate the barriers to getting things done. And if we can make some progress, you know, let's all do that in a way that is both legal and makes sense. And then again, then you started getting into kind of what I call the last mile, that last assistance, house to house kind of assistance, build business to business, one-on-one technical assistance with specific problems, paying taxes was a big one that a lot of people needed assistance with because they had delayed their payments as long as they could. And then again, we also created a very similar plan for outdoor dining. We've now added outdoor display, so sidewalk sales or outdoor display in a parking lot. And then now we're really looking at consumers and how can we get them to buy through the fall and winter. So, you know, we're really focusing on helping the most people at a time. And then you keep doing that. You go back to the communication, you reach out again, making sure that you're being as inclusive as you can with folks, and that you're reaching all of the people you need to reach. We also have weekly meetings with a variety of people on our task force for COVID. It includes the hospital. It's maybe 50% town people and 50% other organizations and business owners who are essential to the operations of the town. So we have the hospital, we have VNA who does our testing, COVID testing right now. That's one of the biggest testing centers in town. We have, of course, the fire departments. We have social services. We have the food pantry, the culinary institute, which is also supporting the senior center and the youth agency by preparing meals and having them delivered. So they've actually got students doing that, which without that, again, I think we would be pretty underwater as far as serving our seniors at home and also youth in the community who would.
Karen, I'm gonna play moderator here, but I'm gonna be a nice one and hopefully an effective one.
Can I play my video and then?
Yes, I was going to say you have a wonderful video of downtown New Milford that I think our audience would love to see.
Okay, all right. So let me share my screen and play this video. Oh, I think you have to let me share it. Okay.
1 second. There we go.
I think it's up. All right.
Yep.
It hurts. It wasn't fair. It's over now, so don't despair. The world could fall down, it's gonna be okay. The sun could go out, we're gonna be okay. Before the blue skies fade to gray, we're gonna be okay. The world could fall down, it's gonna be okay. The sun could go out, we're gonna be okay. Before the blue skies fade to gray, we're gonna be okay.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Every time, and I love the message that we are going to be okay. So
that's awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Karen. Great job. Both of you. Great job. So at this point, I want to hand it off to Tripp a little bit, and then we're going to interact. Tripp, you and I have worked together a couple of times now, and you have worked with probably hundreds of communities across the country, observing, helping leaders bring their downtowns back to life, And you've developed a specialty in disaster recovery, quite by accident, I think. And I know that you and I worked together on that and that level in Sandy Hook a few years ago. What are your thoughts about where we are, about how we're going to recover and hopefully thrive?
Thank you so much, Kim. And you'll be able to tell from my accent that I'm not from Connecticut. So greetings from South Carolina this morning. I want to start out by saying, planner by training, but I'm a Main Street person by passion and by profession. And for over 20 years, I've been part of working with Main Street communities across the United States. Main Street was born out of a national crisis. The national crisis was disinvestment in our traditional downtowns. And Main Street rose to the occasion, and over the past 40 years has been a transformative entity in getting things done. And so if there was ever a group in 2020 facing this really bizarre situation, it's Main Street. And I've been working with Washington Main Street, and they've coined the term Main Street is built for this. And Main Street is built for this because Main Street programs uniquely have the connections between the business community, the government, economic development, elected officials, appointed officials to get these things done. I do want to talk about, kind of divide this up into a couple quick little segments where talk about the state of the economics, because I think that's where a lot of us can get hung up, and then talk about what communities are doing and some resources related to it. So with regard to the economics, hardly a day goes by where we don't pick up some sort of article, some sort of something that says, retail is collapsing, restaurants are collapsing, this is collapsing. J. Crew's filed for bankruptcy, Neiman Marcus is going out of business. I mean, kind of one after the other. I think it's really important to understand that what we hear on the national level with retail and what we are experiencing in our own communities are two distinct things. And one of the things that's been refreshing for me is I've been able to do some merchant roundtables. And for those of you who are involved in Main Street or involved in downtown organization, merchant roundtables can sometimes not be particularly pleasant experiences. But since COVID, what I've heard, the optimism and enthusiasm and willingness to adapt by merchants has been remarkable and refreshing. And so I hope that just by sitting down and listening, and I know that we all can't just sit down and listen in a room, but what Karen and Jason stress is this whole line of communication, whatever that communication is. And we're just saying, pick up the phone and say, how are you doing? These are really critical times to do that with the people who are in the communities. And what we're seeing at a national level is not always reflected in each individual Main Street. For example, there was an article the other day about the death or pending doom of co-working spaces. Well, that may be true in a New York or a Boston, but we're not seeing that happen in small towns because actually a lot of people are commuting and maybe they want to be away from the kids for today and get to a place where they can co-work. So opportunities really need to be looked at a local level. And the other piece of this too is tuning into consumer sentiment. And I will be sharing a link to McKinsey. They do a regular update on consumer sentiment. But one of the things that really jumps off the page at me when I review what's happening is this shift in hyper loyalty. And there's a real opportunity in our own communities to stress, just like Karen and Jason talked about, just like that video that just tugs at your heart. Home. Let's be home. Let's take care of neighbors in a really toxic environment. Got even more toxic last night. That this is the chance where the decisions we make locally, the rules and regulations and the ability to kind of throw some of that out the window and reevaluate that The time is right. The time is right. The other part that we're stressing is there's a lot more tolerance for experimentation and mistake making. I think a lot of us, myself included, if you're an economic developer, a planner, a Main Street person, we want perfection. You know, we want to get it right the first time. We're sensitive to complaints. We're tuned into everything, but there's a lot more room for experimentation and error making. And I think that's a critical piece of this. And this is a chance too, where as when it took 3 planning commission hearings and 15 public hearings or whatever, and, you know, look, I've been at this for over 20 years, you know, downtown has a parking problem, killing parking spaces for outdoor dining. Wow, what a radical turnaround we're seeing where parking spaces are taken up. Public art, just like Jason shared, didn't have to permit those things. You know, the artist just came out and decorated them. And that's happening even in communities where demonstrations are happening, where broken windows are being turned into art. So these kind of reactions are the positive things that those of us on the ground doing what we're doing are really important. And we need to be tuned into that. As we approach this last quarter of 2020, I think there's a chance for us to pause and take stock. And I think this is really important because I didn't ever want crisis recovery to be part of my resume. I didn't ever want that to be. But crisis management, let's think about us shifting from crisis management to recovery. And when you move into recovery, one of the things that you do is you take an inventory. and it's time perhaps in the last quarter, maybe in the first quarter of 2021, to take an inventory of what new partnerships did we form? What new things, policies did we unveil that are working, that need to be edified and codified? You know, who rose to the occasion? What are those tools and things that are available to us that mean something and resonate with us? So I think that's a really important piece of this as planners, downtown folks, Main Street folks, is that, you know, we often think about the process taking forever. Well, what this crisis has done is accelerated all the trends that we were seeing happening before. The trends we were seeing happening before was big box retail on the skids. Very, very different. Than big box is very different. It's formula-based retail. And so downtown retail is not built that way. These are individual property owners. And so this is a chance for property owners or business owners to talk about renegotiating their rents. Banks don't want these buildings back. So all of these are creative solutions. In Alabama, they're deploying a program where they're going in, much like I believe Jason, Karen, you mentioned it with the plexiglass. They're doing markings on streets or, you know, spacing for social distancing. They're doing plexiglass. They're doing foot pulls for doors so you don't have to use your hands to open the doors. And they're coming in like a strike force in community after community. The other piece of this too, and I think this is where I sometimes get overwhelmed myself, is whenever there is a crisis or a disaster, the amount of information that floods in can sometimes be just absolutely overwhelming. And sifting through what's meaningful and helpful vis-a-vis what is, you know, not, can sometimes really be challenging. And I appreciate Karen pointing out the CECD's resources. And I had a question the other week from a Washington Main Streeter who they said, well, I'm not an economic development person. How do I get that training? And I'm like, look, none of us started out as economic development people. We got there through doing what we're doing. And so you keep doing what you're doing and you'll learn. And CECD has some great resources. I do want to post a couple things that I think are really important. I'll put them in the chat as we move to Q&A. One is, and this is the other part too, and I just throw it on the table. I'm a consultant, you know, but those of us who do economic development consulting, we tore down the barriers. And so I have a colleague out of Tennessee. He's put together what's called Reopen Main Street. It's a website full of resources. His name's Jay Schlensog. He's fantastic. I'll post that in the chat for you to look at. I think it's really important to dial into what McKinsey is doing. It is an international firm that kind of gives the pulse of consumer sentiment, and that's a great resource. And then another one that Connecticut, we've had the privilege of working with Connecticut Main Street on, is 10 quick videos for your businesses. Because what we're finding is, and these are timely, they're going to last well beyond COVID, but talk about accelerating trends. You know, when this happened, a lot of restaurants, and that's still to this day, it's frustrating to me. You know, I want to order takeout, and it's like, well, I call, I can't find the menu, you know. So how do you get online? What's the right platform to do this? How do we communicate? How do we equip businesses? And these 10 videos that you just posted at the link, please, please, please share them with your business owners. They're designed to be consumed in little chunks so that they can tailor the time that they take. Because the last thing a business owner wants to do is take an hour and a half to go to a seminar. But a quick 15-minute video on how do I get online can be something that maybe gets to those issues. I want to wrap up by, and there's just so much to talk about on this, but I think Q&A is going to be really important, this is our time to pause and reflect and count the successes that we have achieved in each of our communities. It's also a time to be gentle with one another. Never have I had more conversations where I pick up the phone with people who it's just a strict business relationship, and instead of saying, how are you? I say, how are you? And we end up spending a few minutes just talking about how we're doing. We are those connectors in those communities, in our communities, and this is a real chance to do that. And if we move out of crisis mode and into recovery mode, then we can start thinking about what those next steps are. Instead of reacting, we start being proactive. So I want to, just congratulate every one of you, because I know that you all have been working tirelessly in your communities. And just want to say how proud I am to be a part of the Main Street community, part of downtown development, and even a professional planner. Sometimes I'm a professional planner, but I get a little like, oh gosh, a planner and planner speak gets on my nerves. But we've risen to the occasion in our professions, and we're doing well for our community. So I hope that gives a little perspective. I'd love to open it up, kick it back to you, Kim, and see what y'all want to know more about. And I'll post these links real quick.
Great. Thank you, Tripp. Thank you for your words of support to all of us. And I get a real sense that we're all in this together. We know that. And so congratulations to all of you for all the hard work you're doing. Yes, we do have some questions in our chat box. One that I want to hit on, we've had several questions and comments, and this is the great thing about chat because people can share, about form-based codes. So the planning people that are at the table here, as well as economic development people that want to know, we have had some form-based codes adopted in Connecticut. Bridgeport, Simsbury, done an outstanding job with that, other communities as well. Have you noticed our panelists, Jason, Karen, and Tripp, are form-based codes now a more active part of the conversation as part of this pandemic, as part of what we're going through?
So I made a quick comment that in New Milford, I have been introducing form-based code in a lot of conversations, even pre-COVID, but I think we're still getting a lot of resistance to it. I think just from a lack of understanding of what kind of a tool it is, and that how it would benefit us in filling some of our vacant buildings and some of our vacant spaces in particular. But there doesn't seem to be an understanding of how releasing some of that control actually gives you it comes back to you with a better result. And so the traditional method is still the method we're using. And there are some obvious challenges, including number one, lack of flexibility. So, there is no flexibility in that part of our code right now. If anything, we have a heightened level of restriction in our downtown because people do feel strongly and protective about it. And I understand that feeling. Like I said, to me, it's still an educational issue that we have to address. And unfortunately, during COVID, many of our education and training things that we were planning on doing have kind of been put to the side because we had to teach them how to have a meeting online and things like that. So we still have work to do in that regard, but I have no doubt that eventually we'll get there. Another community that has won an award for their form-based code is Hartford, by the way.
Yes.
So that was, I thought they did a beautiful job as well. So there are an increasing number of Connecticut examples where form-based code has allowed them greater flexibility and a new vibrancy especially in target areas like a downtown district.
Yeah. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Well, form-based code is about creating a zoning code that is about the form and how buildings fit into the landscape rather than other things. I saw that question pop up from the first selectman as well. Zoning really has three main features that it manages. It manages use, it manages bulk issues, form, if you will, and then it has management issues, what I call management issues, where dumpsters may be located, sounds, things of that nature. The lesson that I think has come out of this is use and management issues that are overhyped within most zoning codes are not a problem within most towns. We did the outdoor dining on the street and in parking lots, and we're not getting complaints about outdoor dining. People in these outdoor restaurants are running to 11 o'clock at night in a downtown in a mixed use environment, and we're getting zero complaints about how those are fitting in. So, our overemphasis and reliance on managing use and these other tedious management issues is probably something that towns need to think about moving from their code and getting towards, how does new development integrate better into the fabric of their neighborhoods, what you're putting in.
And I'll just chime in briefly. For small communities, sometimes form-based code can be a little difficult just from a staffing and a management program. And what Jason is touching on, and we're seeing other communities look at, is hybrid code. That basically it's form-based where it's appropriate, and then it's maybe traditional where appropriate. But to reinforce Jason's comment, the regulatory piece of zoning that gets into the parking requirements or to use of adjacent land, even just weird things like a retail, okay, we're moving into colder months, so if you're a restaurant and you need more seating, are you allowed to serve in a retail next door that may put tables inside it? But does the zoning code say no? Heaven forbid, or the health department, don't put tables in a retail. That's not permitted. This is the time to really evaluate the regulatory thing and figure out what's working and what isn't. So I like to look at, a solution-based thing sometimes rather than the dogmatic, planner, form-based code. Let's look at the solution-based thing and see what should be sticking.
Yeah, excellent comment, Tripp. Thank you. That segues into another big question that was also a topic of conversation in our last webinar. We are clearly going to be entering the cold months very shortly. And so the viability of restaurants, and we are going to do phase 3 in Connecticut effective October 8th. So the capacity is being increased, but that's a numbers thing. We still have the public perception of how safe it is to be eating indoors. So what kind of creative solutions have any of the three of you seen, whether discussions in your own communities or out and about within the world in general, of addressing outdoor dining and activities during those cold winter months? I'll throw it out, and anybody who wants to answer, jump right in.
I'll start. I just posted a link to what the city of Chicago has done with the outdoor dining challenge, basically putting it out there to the people. Chicago, notoriously brutal winters. And so might as well look to, we use the term R&D, rip off and duplicate. So What are other communities exploring? I was in a meeting with Vermont community developers the other week, and one of the things we talked about there was there are a lot of town hall buildings or town meeting houses, big open spaces and radiator heating, as opposed to like forced air heating. And it's like, well, gosh, you know, these buildings are not used a big old chunk of the time. Why didn't that become a food hall to expand dining, you know, and create social distance spaces? Just a couple quick ideas, and that link's posted.
You know, I like the R&D comment there. The things that I've seen some towns do, they're creating dedicated pickup areas in front of restaurants. So if there's curb areas in front of the restaurant, they're making sure there's they allow A-frame signs. Oh my word, A-frame signs. Those things, they're typically illegal in most towns' zoning codes, but they should be allowed for this time frame. And I think that's great. You know, in terms of that food hall, we run a co-work space that's right next door to a restaurant. And we're trying to figure out, hey, you know, our co-work space is closed on Friday and Saturday nights. You know, could we allow that restaurant to put additional seating in here? And we're trying to figure out the health code and liquor issues. And really, we have all these artificial barriers. Like, if we allow this stuff to happen outdoors without any issues, like we're just going to put it in another space next door that's indoor that is made for the same occupancy level under the building code. You know, it's amazing how the barriers are out there. But you know, I like the food hall idea. I think that's another great one that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tripp, you had mentioned when we were meeting prior to this to plan for this event, you had mentioned Gather Greenville in South Carolina. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then maybe throw up a link to that when you have a moment?
Sure. Well, and I think this is one of the trends that's going to be really important for the future of our downtowns is the idea of microspace and smaller retail, smaller dining, lower barrier of entry for entrepreneurs. We're going to see a lot of what we see in a crisis actually is kind of almost every time, whether it's a recession or even a natural disaster, is this blooming of entrepreneurialism afterward. And so the idea of lowering the barrier of entry, small spaces for independent businesses to get their foothold. I'm actually working in a small town in Washington State. The guy owned a traditional hardware store, an Ace hardware store. He closed the Ace hardware store. He has 40 vendors inside. I just talked with him last week. He said, we are doing great through COVID. And he's actually graduating businesses out of his space during COVID who are so successful. So I'll post the link to Gather Greenville, which is actually taking a vacant space and putting containers on it. And it's got eateries and a tap room and other things that just creative use of space.
Great. Thank you, Tripp. So here's, sorry, I have a little bit of a hitch in my, screen sharing. Am I screen sharing? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I know we're coming up on the end of our time, and I want to respect everybody's time. So once again, we are recording today's session. It will be available on our website, ctmainstreet.org, where you can find lots of information, no matter what stage of revitalization you're in. For instance, as Tripp had mentioned, you can access our Reopen Downtown video series produced by Arnett Muldrow. They're short videos that can be watched anytime, that can be shared with your businesses. Topics include e-commerce presence, social media for small businesses, tips for health and beauty, and effective retail photography. A little plug, our next webinar will be Wednesday, October 21st at 10 a.m., again, an hour long. Pitch Perfect, a quick introduction to Connecticut's small business financing options, will be a fast-paced session where funders will have 10 minutes each to introduce their organization, their key programs and services, and one success story. And then participants will be able to expand their knowledge with a lively Q&A following the panel discussion. Many thanks to Tripp Muldrow, Jason Vincent, Karen Pollard. You guys are wonderful. We thank you for sharing your creativity and your ideas and your passion with us. And thank all of you for attending our session today. You will be getting an evaluation. Please fill that out. It's very short. And then we'd love to see you on social media, of course. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Please take care of yourselves and have a great day. Thank you.